Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast presented by Strava Craft Coffee. Remember to use that promo code DNVR20 because you'll get 20% off your entire purchase of that CBD-infused, deliciously rich, and potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I am your host, Drew Creasman. I'm the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. Patrick Lyons will be along with us here in just a moment to discuss a 5-2 loss at the hands of the San Francisco Giants in what was a well-played game by a few members of the Colorado Rockies. Certainly Kyle Freeland pitched a good game. Kevin Pillar came to play. He had some big hits and a big defensive play late. There were some, grinded out at-bats for the Rockies, and they weren't able to, again, come up with some big hits after we've seen them do it in the last couple of games. Another left on base, LOB kind of nightmare of a game for the Rockies tonight. Though I will say, for the most part, and I'll go through kind of the key ones here in just a minute, I felt like their approach and their process at the plate in most of those key at-bats was still fine. The result just didn't end up going for them, which sometimes happens. And if you're not, if your backs aren't against the wall, this is kind of a shrug your shoulders loss that you can kind of throw out and say, hey, it happens. The ball didn't find the green out there for the Rocks tonight, did for the Giants. You're still asking a lot of these same bullpen questions, and we'll dive in all of that. Obviously, that's going to be our main topic of conversation here, especially once Patrick arrives. But, for the most part, again, for the offense, who's been the problem for much of the year, you got 2 more hits out of Tapia, 2 more out of Pillar. Trevor Story threw out a base hit, though he again left 3 on base. Charlie Blackmon had a couple of tough situational at-bats. He's the one guy that I would say really just, didn't have good situational at-bats early in the game. And obviously you don't expect that to be the norm from Charlie Blackmon. The biggest example of what I'm talking about here, again, before we get into the bullpen stuff, which I promise we're going to do as Patrick makes his way in eventually. But early in the game, the first inning, the Rockies get runners to second and third after hits from Pillar and Story, 1 out. And as I mentioned, Charlie Blackmon, with the not necessarily the bad situational at bat all the way together. He swung at a curveball out of the zone for the strikeout. The result obviously was really bad. He worked it okay, but the strikeout there was killer. And then Josh Fuentes went down and got a good pitch to hit. And he hit it really hard. He hit it 99 miles an hour to left field. Expected batting average on that thing with a launch angle of 18 degrees, 430 off the bat. You're thinking 2-run double. But didn't go down that way. They had him positioned nicely. Left fielder moves over, makes a catch instead of 2 runs. At least one if Charlie manages to not strike out there. Rockies come away with 0. So while functionally it's the exact same as any other time in the season where the Rockies have not managed to bring in runs there, from a process standpoint, I submit to you that was better process. Those were better at bats, just didn't get the result. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but at least he gave yourself a chance there. And the Rockies had actually a couple of those throughout the game. Looks like Patrick is ready to hop on here, join us for that part of the conversation. Patrick, I do want to jump into the big conversation here, which is going to be the bullpen and why Jairo Diaz in that spot and who else do you go to and just what's going on with the Rockies bullpen. But on the point that I was just making, there were a couple of those close plays tonight. There was another one where an inning led off with a base hit to left for Garrett Hampson, tried to stretch it into a double, just barely gets thrown out. And, I think a lot of people might want to put that in the category of something we've talked about a lot this year. Rockies trying too hard, doing too much, being way too aggressive. And I'd put that into the category of took an absolutely perfect throw. You're out by a bit of an inch. Stay with that process. More often than not, it's going to pay off for you. It's just hard to take those kind of small victories of, hey, you did the right thing. Like with Josh Fuentes, you did the right thing in the first inning. You swung at that ball. You made good contact. You just get the right result. When your backs are up the wall, harder to take those small victories. But from a process standpoint, I didn't feel like the offense was as terrible as maybe the 2 runs tonight and all the left on base might lead you to believe.
We might not see it that often at the big league level for Rockies fielders when they're up at the plate and on the bases, but they absolutely preach at the lower levels of the minors, and that's being aggressive. And you saw Garrett Hampson, who's still finding his way as a major leaguer, at being aggressive there on that single to left field. I mean, even the path that Robertson took to that ball, he was really charging in on it in a really impressive way, and you kind of see why he was a shortstop coming up in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
So great throw, like you said, got him. But that's the kind of play you want out of Garrett Hampson is for him to be aggressive and to use his legs. And you know what? That's hasn't been the only time this year that we've seen him, get thrown out. There was a play, I want to say maybe a week and a half ago, getting thrown out at third base. Again, being a little too aggressive, trying to stretch into a triple, I think it may have been. So, those things happen, but that's what you want. You want him to err on the side of aggression, at least right now, in which a time that ultimately it seems as if the team is not gunning for that playoff spot. I mean, if they get it, they get it, but they're not going to tell their players to do anything other than what they've been doing. And when you have Garrett Hampson, you're telling them, look, use your legs. That's one of your greatest strengths. So play that up. And he's leading off an inning. He's trying to get something started, get something sparked. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. But, I applaud the young man for getting that done. And you don't know what's going to happen after that. Elias Diaz goes and he pops up. And you go, all right, 2 outs, nothing happens. And then lo and behold, a little rally starts going there. They're able to get a run with the Tapia single and the Pilar double. And you go, oh, man, that actually was a much bigger play than we realized at the time. But, in that moment, you go, all right, go and be aggressive. Figure out, get thrown out at second base now in a game that ultimately doesn't mean quite as much for you and your club. So that next year, in a much bigger spot, you maybe don't make that mistake again at Oracle Park or against Daniel Robertson or just in any scenario in which, you're the leadoff guy and we'd rather you be on first base with no outs than try to stretch that double. So he's still learning the game. And I think that's just an important part of the process of this final week is making those kind of errors are okay.
Yeah. And that, and I think if I was having a conversation too with him after that, the thing that I would also point out is, look, man, and I don't think it was Drew Smiley still in the game. I believe this was off of a reliever at that point, but it was like they grabbed another stolen base off a reliever. They had something on the Giants, and we've seen in this series miscommunication. With Bar having to run out to the mound to clear up signs a bunch of times. The Giants haven't been on the same page with their battery a lot. And the Rockies very wisely took advantage of it today with all those stolen bases. So that's another one where it's like, know the game that we're in here. Take your single, because we've been stealing bases with Kevin Pillar and Matt Kemp. And you're Garrett Hampson. So we can still take that bag, right? And that's I think another thing that you've got to be aware of, but a lesson that a young player can learn. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's an interesting point with Matt Kemp, because I mean, if you're really trying to win ball games, like you don't know, Matt, no, you are not allowed to steal a base. You perpetually have a red light on that one, and we've taken the green bulb or the green piece of glass on the street light. It's gone. There's no yellow light in there. In fact, we've turned the power off and you just should know you have a red light. So yeah, it was his first stolen base attempt, I think, since 2016, and his first successful stolen base since 2015, and first one against the Giants since 2014. So if you had that on DraftKings today, oh my gosh.
Right.
I think you probably just owe us
You can retire
something.
now.
I don't know what you owe us, but I feel like you owe us something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Help us out.
A little something.
You made a lot of money. Come on.
Just come down to the bar, hang out. But yeah, other than that, like I said, the left on base, always very, very frustrating. Rockies left 16 on base out there tonight. But at the very least, they did get a big hit late, as you mentioned there, from Kevin Pillar, and they timed this thing up, and it's time for another edition, Patrick, of Your Bullpen Makes You Drink, brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery. Remember to get that Avalanche Amber, that Hot Peak IPA, whatever you like. Get a 15-can sampler if you're not sure, whether you're getting it from local King Supers, whatever liquor store you like going by, maybe a Costco, maybe you're swinging on by the DNVR bar. But my favorite place to get it, because you also get some pretty nice food with it as well, is down at the Farmhouse. You call 303-803-1380 from noon to 8 p.m. Use that promo code DNVR. You save $5 on both the food and the beer. Really fantastic situation there for you. They can even get you set up with the old RK special. Now, they won't know what that means. Down at the DNVR bar, you can just walk in and say, give me the RK special, and they will know what it means.
What's the? I don't know what the RK special is.
That is half of Hot Peak IPA and Strawberry Sky, half Strawberry Sky. So you got to pour that. Now, I have only had 2 RK specials total in my life. The first one was very unofficial, and it was on an episode of TDSP. And it was unofficial because I just happened to I had the 15-can sampler. So I had a Strawberry Sky and I had a Hot Peak. And I just opened each one and was taking a drink of each one at a time to kind of let it mix in my mouth, which kind of worked. It was okay. RK actually argued that was the purest form of the RK special, but maybe not one people want to engage in. They'll actually mix it up for you. What you should do is pour an equal measure into a glass, which is what they will do for you down at the DNVR bar.
And if you get the 15-can sampler, you'll be able to do a couple of those with your friends, so that's nice.
Right. Give it a shot. Let us know what you think. Give Ryan Koenigsberg the big thumbs up and the thank you if you decide that's what you like. We got to get the DC special named after me, which is getting you got to get the buffalo wings, but it's half buffalo, half Cajun dry rub. Get the Cajun dry rub wings down at the DNVR bar. Cajun dry rub is underrated, but a lot of places don't do it well. They don't do it right. If I'm going to be an elitist about it,
you're a wing guy.
Wings? Yeah.
You're all about the wings. Focus on the wings. I'm glad you went there and weren't trying to do this, Jelly Belly thing of, hey, if you take this flavored jelly bean and do that one, it's like a cherry pie. No. Go with the wings. I like where you're going on this.
The DC special is now, this isn't an official thing. If you walk into the DNVR bars, give me the DC special, they'll look at you like you're ridiculous. But I'm working on it. Because it's the half order of both. Because you got to get some buffalo wings. Like buffalo wings, you got to have some buffalo wings. But you got to have some Cajun dry rub as well. And you get a tots to pair with that. You have to have tots to pair with.
Love tots. I submit that, and again, it's a minor detail. Instead of going with special, like the RK special, call it the DC basket.
Love it.
Little baskets, right?
I love it.
Branding. It's branding. DC basket.
And I love that too, because we got a baseball game. We'll get back into the baseball game in just a second. But it is always irritating me that at most places they don't just put all that stuff in one big basket for you. And that there's almost nowhere where wings come with fries or tots. You always have to order them separately, which is still true right now at the DNVR bar. And that's why I want you to be able to walk in and order one thing. I'll take the DC basket, because that means you're getting the tots with your wings, and that you're probably, and a Breck brew to go with it. Yeah. So, all right. And you'll have all of that and that is clearly a comfort food special
Yeah.
basket for you. You're going to need it for the conversation about the bullpen. Now, Patrick, my understanding today is that Yency Almonte, Michael Givens, and Tyler Kinley were unavailable, which dramatically changes the nature of this conversation from what is Bud Black doing putting Jairo Diaz into a 2-2 game in the 7th inning to who in the hell else is he supposed to put into a 2-2 game in the 7th inning, considering how bad the Rockies bullpen has been this year?
Okay, what if I were to tell you there's a guy in the Rockies bullpen that was available tonight that in his last 5 outings, he had thrown up goose eggs. Now, it was 4 1/3 innings pitched. He had put 5 guys on base, 2 hits, 3 walks.
Yeah.
But you say 5 scoreless outings. You probably want that guy in the game, all things considered, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Jairo Diaz. So while his ERA maybe have been sitting
That was
at
such a good setup. I got so hammered by that. I was like really searching for it. Well done.
Look, this is why we're both professionals. Come on. It's not a coincidence we both have this job.
Very well done.
But yeah, so his ERA is dangling a little above 7, but it was at 9.5, 2 weeks ago, slowly but surely whittling it down. And again, I mean, you're right. They just don't have too many options. And it is what it is. And you go, hey, you know what? If you're building upon that success, you go, yeah, he can go out and get these guys. Kapler's going to have to go to his bench to see, what he's got on there. Alex Dickerson, Brandon Belt, and well, sure enough, both those guys did end up coming through for Kapler. But I think you replay that inning over again, 100 times. I think Jairo Diaz is probably successful 70 of those. Again, considering the fact that he's had so much success, much of which came out actually at home at Coors Field. So, I was okay with that move. Yeah, my initial thought was, I don't like this, and then very immediately when Dickerson homered, you go, everyone knew that was a bad call, but
sure. But then
you look a little deeper and you go, actually, you know what? Again, all things considered, it's not. What are you going to do, right?
If Almonte or Givens are available, and that's why to blow this out to a much bigger conversation, this is why I do get so frustrated when I feel like nuance isn't allowed to be injected into conversations about the Colorado Rockies and the desire to take just about everything that happens and make it about the big conversation. It's the old Winston Churchill quote that about fanaticism, which of course fan is short for fanatic. And you can be a fan of a team, but you can also be a fan of an idea, and you can be a fan of a tribe, and you can define yourself against. And the Churchill quote, of course, was that a fanatic is a person who won't change their mind and can't change the subject. And far too often, I feel like we get stuck in this repetitive, it always has to be the same subject. We have now 2 situations in the last couple of weeks where Bud Black has, in a tie game, handed the ball to a reliever where it was highly questionable that reliever be in the game at all. And then the game got totally blown up. One of those times I came on here and told you this is on the manager. The other time I didn't, because the situations are actually very different. And that's a rough one, but it's an important nuance. And I saw people just blowing up Bud Black all over Twitter tonight. It's like, this one's not on him. And even the construction of the bullpen overall, while we know that's definitely on the general manager, so much of this Rockies bullpen has just been the upside down, right? Like Almonte and Bard have been great, and no one had that. And Diaz and Estevez have been terrible, and very few people had that, especially coming off of the years they did a year ago. No Oberg whatsoever. There was no way to predict that. And it's just been I'm sure just a nightmare for Bud Black to try to answer that question of who do I trust out there in the bullpen right now?
And without a minor league season, you don't have an opportunity for
Right.
guys to get work in, somewhere down the line. It's, the Rockies are, of course, in a very precarious situation because there's, virtually no relievers, maybe a handful from time to time in Albuquerque pitching there in the Pacific Coast League who have good numbers. But again, those coaches down there are looking at, a lot smaller things and just looking for guys building on success. And hey, you made your pitch, and that guy just stuck the end of his bat out. I think he only had one hand on the bat, and he went homered opposite field. That's not on you. We're going to kind of subtract that. So I'm sure they even have certain metrics for that to say overall, hey, this was a good performance. This one wasn't. You also have the umpires who are still learning their craft. They're been professionals for at that point a little under a decade. So they miss calls too, of course. So the Rockies definitely are at a disadvantage in a normal year, but now with them just working out at Metro State, it's really hard to get a feel for who's doing what they need to do. That being said, they've still been like rotating guys in and out, and we saw that last week where it was very strategic who they would use one game, and as soon as a guy made an appearance and threw 2 innings, we saw with Mujica, we saw with Santos, they immediately were shipped out for some fresh arms there, and I think with some of the rules this year, which have been similar to years in the past, where if you option a guy down to the minors, they have to stay down for a certain amount of days. So it's not like you can just immediately send a guy down for 4 days. Okay, now we need you again, and we're going to send you back down because we've used you up. It doesn't exactly work like that. So they've really just been at a major disadvantage, which is frustrating because you've gotten such great outings from the starting pitching.
Yeah.
It's not as if it's like, well, you had to use Almonte in this game where you were down by 3 runs because you just needed someone to go in the 8th inning and maybe keep the score close. No, those guys have been pitching in the games that they should be pitching in.
Yeah.
So it's a bit flabbergasting, and it's hard, I know, for a lot of Rockies fans in these games, and even if the team isn't playing for a playoff spot, you want to disrupt what the Giants are doing, because
Sure.
the Giants were supposed to be at the bottom of the division, and as it turns out, they might be the ones getting to celebrate in October. So you definitely want to try to throw a wrench in one of your division rivals.
Yeah, and it never feels good to have those games where it just feels like they totally slip away from you like that, and especially too that the Dickerson home run comes one batter, like before the Rockies have recorded an out after that at bat that Kevin Pillar put together, the just extraordinary grind the Rockies had to do after like 2 or 3 missed golden opportunities earlier in the game. They finally come through with a 2-out, 2-strike double to left field that scores Raimel Tapia all the way from first base. And then solo Jack, who cares? And it's just like, that's so deflating. It's so deflating to a fan base, to an offense, to a team that's really rough. But there's, and there's a super irony there too. So it's like, what? Now you're looking again at, well, what's the Rockies' biggest area of need this offseason? Bullpen. So what? Spend a bunch of money on a bunch of guys who've proven that they can be successful somewhere else, and we start this whole nightmare all over again?
Drew, the Rockies have not spent $107 million on 3 relievers in an offseason yet. So until they do, you just don't know.
You just never know.
Incidentally, I should give since we're talking about Rockies relievers, we should most definitely, I can't say with a straight face, give a shout out to Jake McGee, who recorded the final out for the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are now 8 consecutive NL West division champs. So nice job, Jake McGee.
Asterisks. Or we're going to turn that thing around now. Works both ways. Yeah, and as you mentioned, then AJ Ramos comes into the game, and he looks like a guy who, he looks exactly like what he is. He looks like a guy who used to be really good. Like that, like he comes in and you see the break on that thing, you're like, wow, and then you realize he has no control over where it goes. And, he gives up a big double there, and that's pretty much the game. But indicative again of, it's also not as easy as being like, well, go and get all the reclamation projects, and that can maybe work out for you. As like, they've got to find this middle balance somewhere, but you still like the idea of AJ Ramos, if not the the actual AJ Ramos.
Yeah, and those reclamation projects, as you said, they can be touch and go, but maybe the one thing that the Rockies have going for them, or at least in this season, when they've kind of just thrown a couple things up against the wall in regards to the bullpen, is that you got the inside track on signing one of the better breakout relievers in 2020, and that's Daniel Bard. And you've got AJ Ramos, who you might be able to get him, bring him back on a non-roster invite deal, because he's not, he hasn't shown enough. And again, it's only been 2 outings, but he hasn't shown enough to get a major league deal. So, yeah, you were kind enough to extend an offer to me, and I might as well be loyal. And I also look around this clubhouse and I go, yeah, I can make this team and, out of spring training. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, deal that, it's going to pay me, $1.5 million if I make the opening day roster. And if you don't put me on the opening day roster, then I become a free agent. So it's going to be a win-win. And, the Rockies, need to come up with a lot of creative deals like that, even if it's guys that, haven't, made their purple debut, so to speak. So, the bullpen is still a question, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, Patrick. Well, let's move a little bit of this conversation away from the sad points here and talk about one bright spot. Of course, before we get into that, though, one bright spot that I've had in my life is the opportunity to take a couple classes over at MSU Denver online. Really super helpful for my education, just getting a few extra skills that I needed in life post degree over there at the University of Colorado Boulder. But I got this msudenver.edu/online game working, and you can too, whether you got your situation taken care of, trying to get a new degree going, you just want a couple of extra skills. Maybe you just want to learn about something that you were never interested in before ever in your life, but you are now. Learning is fun. I have found in my
take a film study class. Oh my God.
Right.
You will annoy all your friends with all your knowledge about film now.
Right.
But if that's something you're into, I am, you're going to learn a crazy amount on again, film studies and theology and philosophy in film. Like, they've got stuff like that that's will kind of knock your socks off.
All kinds of great stuff. Check them out over at msu.edu/online for all of their courses and degree situations for you. We've also got to talk at the end here, Patrick, about the one and only King of Denver and draft king of the game, Kyle Freeland. Remember to use that promo code DNVR. He pitched 6 innings, gave up 5 hits and the 2 earned runs, just the 1 strikeout, 3 walks, struggled with his command really throughout the game, which is why it's pretty damned impressive that he was able to end up going for the quality start, considering he really wasn't able to get his fastball where he wanted to for much of the evening and had to rely on breaking balls and changeups. And even those were kind of a grind for him to get them. Actually, it's funny. We talked about this just previously in the start with Germán Marquez only getting 3 strikeouts. It was the same basic thing where the breaking pitches were all starting just out of the zone already earlier in counts. And so, whether he was nibbling, I don't think he was nibbling. I think he was missing his spots early and then like really grinding in as he was getting into a 3-2 count. It felt like every single at bat. And then he'd find the good slider or he'd break off that good 2-seamer and he'd get that ground ball that he needed. And it was just a battle for him all night. You could see him fighting himself, and that he was able to put up a pretty good performance against a team with playoff aspirations here and special aspirations was pretty impressive.
Yeah, home plate umpire Mark Rippinger was, he was tough to figure out a little bit. And I mean, I was flipping back and forth and listening to a little the KNBR Giants radio broadcast, and you could hear some of the difficulties that he was having behind the plate. But you know, Freeland Freeland did what he needs to do when he needs to do it, and that was in the first, in the fifth. He gives up a run, stays in the jam, and what does he do? He ends the inning with a double play. Right,
Yeah.
2 more double plays tonight, gives him 14, so he's got the MLB lead right now, ahead of, I think it's Zach Wheeler, who has 11 so far on the season. Freeland's now tied with a handful of other guys with 12 starts. Herman Marquez being one of them. So you also have got the 9 quality starts with this performance. So he's now tied atop the National League with Yu Darvish, and behind the MLB league lead with 10. 3 other guys have 10. So I mean, he's doing what he
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence. It's not luck. I mean, yeah, you only strike out one guy, and you give up 5 hits, 3 walks. Okay, that's not so bad for 6 innings if you only have 8 base runners. Ultimately it's higher than he would have liked. But I mean, he's been doing it with the ground ball. His ground outs to fly ball outs is in the top 10 in baseball, top 5 in the National League. So, he's doing all of those little things really well. And back in 2018, he wasn't striking out a lot of guys either. So,
Right.
He's really kind of gone back to his bread and butter, and you don't get that sense that he's going to give up that big fly like last year in 2019, where you go, all right, come on, Kyle, let's see something out of you. Let's get out of this. Oh man, another back-to-back homers. Yeah, and next thing you know, it's 4 runs. And this year it's like, nice, you got out of it. And those moments just aren't as pressure packed of like, you gotta do this. It's just, all right, hey, let's see some tenacity here. Boom, thanks for delivering. Done. You know what I mean? It never really escalates in any capacity, because he's just so composed and producing, and he's getting those ground balls when he needs to, and rebounding and getting tough when he has to. It's really impressing and really promising for what's to come in the next couple of years, and the potential for an extension. It's all right there. It's all right there in front of us.
Let's actually take a look at a couple of these additional StatCast stats to go along with what you were talking about here, because as you can see that now these can be a little bit difficult to understand. You want the high numbers here, right? You want that 81st percentile in barrel percentage, means that he's in the top 20% of pitchers in terms of limiting guys from putting the barrel on the ball. You see him near the top also in terms of exit velocity, doing very well, and hard hit rate. And that are all the things that, like you said, while guys are making contact against him, those are the things that lead to the double plays and the him working out of the jams. It's not a matter of luck entirely, at the very least. It's certainly a matter of a particular kind of design. And I'm sure if we went back to 2018, we would see these numbers match up very similarly, where if we went to 2019, in fact, I wonder if I can do that really quick while we're taking a look at it, we would see the inverse, right? We would see those numbers really jump. Of course, I'm not going to be able to figure that out right, but in terms of barrel percentage and exit velocity last year, all that stuff way up.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal, and we just got done talking about the bullpen still being this question mark. But again, if you can have Senzatella, Marquez, and Freeland going out and shoving for 6 innings, that just makes the bullpen's job that much easier. And really, because these guys are still so incredibly young, and I think even a guy like John Gray, who at 29 years old is still young, that they can eventually make the leap to having starts a little bit closer to 7 innings. And then what are you talking about? Are you talking about 2 innings? You know what I mean? So that's going to motivate a bullpen to say, I want to be that guy to bridge that gap, or I want to be getting those big outs, and you're going to be in, closer, more competitive games. You're going to be winning more ball games, and it's just going to have this trickle down effect that, again, you saw all in 17 and 18, and last year you saw it's like anytime you have a closer coming into a non-save situation, right? They can't get that adrenaline going. They can't get the juice up to do the job that they need to do, and what happens. And that's kind of what it's like for any team that's, not really contending and not winning ball games. And you saw that for a lot of this year. Now that's not the, the magic bullet that's the through line through all of this, for the Rockies bullpen. It's just a matter of, maybe, the fans weren't there, and Coors Field has great fans and they're so passionate and the guys couldn't get up. No, there's much more that's broken, but that's certainly, an element to, falling on one side of the hill versus the other. And you just, once you start building that momentum, man, it's real hard to be stopped.
Yeah, you just reminded me. I was going to close it out here, but we didn't really talk about. I saw this kind of blowing up on Twitter today, and I really didn't think anything of it because I had said the exact same thing on the podcast 2 days ago about the Rockies maybe feeling a bit freer to play without Nolan Arenado, and it being maybe a good thing for everybody involved. And then after last night's game, Kevin Pillar came out and said basically the same thing. And I saw a lot of people taking it in the most extreme way possible, and suggesting that he was saying that the Rockies are better without Nolan Arenado, which is not at all even close to what he said. He basically, what he was trying to work around was talking about playing looser because you're almost certainly not going to make it. but he did mention specifically Nolan Arenado not being there, and that kind of freeing guys up to just do whatever they wanted to do. And I think it's interesting that, and again, in some circles, he's just getting flamed for this because I think it's pretty transparently true. The other thing that I think is interesting is what he said specifically was about the clubhouse just feeling a bit freer. And that, I think, is something you've got to take the word of a guy who's in and around the clubhouse. As much as people want to come out and deny what he said to be true, it's very difficult to do that when you don't have first or even secondhand knowledge of, well, you do have secondhand knowledge. You have secondhand knowledge from Kevin Pillar telling you, I was there, this is what it felt like. So, again, I don't think anyone wants to run away with it. And there are zero long-term conclusions to draw from any of this. But they're playing a little bit better without a guy who was hurt or not playing well or not happy, or actually all three of those things. It shouldn't come as a gigantic shock, I don't think.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun talking point, to say the least. On one hand, you say, well, that's a mighty small sample size to just say, oh man, the clubhouse just feels a little bit looser, and you win a game Monday night and then you lose Tuesday. So, okay, so is a loose clubhouse good, or is that bad? Right. And then we know that the Rockies were really tight last year, all throughout the summer, when they completely tanked, and Las Cucarachas kind of took over and loosened some things up a little bit, and that kind of improved clubhouse morale a little bit, but ultimately it didn't go anywhere. So you say, well, maybe they are playing a little bit too tight, but again, there are teams that have leaders that expect a lot out of their guys, and sometimes you can thrive on that. Other guys can't. There are players when they go to New York, or even sometimes Chicago. I mean, Chicago really is no New York. Sorry, yeah. but really, New York is the spot. Boston, I should say, even Philadelphia. But those big, northeast cities where some guys, they just get a reputation and they can't. Randy Johnson couldn't really handle New York. Javier Vasquez, who's a name out there that the Yankees gave up a lot to acquire, and they shipped him out immediately. Sonny Gray is a more recent example. Fantastic with Oakland, doesn't get the job done in New York. Now he's pairing up with Trevor Bauer and Luis Castillo in Cincinnati, and those guys look very formidable if they can get in the playoffs. And so you say, well,
Matsui.
There you go. So you got a clubhouse, and you say, all right, well, there's maybe some added pressure due to some of the players maybe that are in the clubhouse. It seems like that's not a good thing, but diamonds are made through extreme pressure. So and there's no telling that even a leader of a team is putting guys under extreme pressure. They might just be saying, look, you guys need to be out there getting in your work, working hard. Troy Tulowitzki said those things for better or worse.
People making that comparison, and I think it's a little early for that, but it's also not at all fair to only draw the negative, as you're pointing out here, to only draw the negative conclusion from, because Tulowitzki's attitude did become a problem, and I firmly stand by it. And that's an opinion of mine, by the way. There's, again, no way to prove that, to prove that he was an issue in the clubhouse. But from what I've heard, from the little bit I was able to see from the people that I've talked to, it does sound like it became a problem. But Troy Tulowitzki and his in-your-face desire and need to force people to demand as much excellence of themselves as he demanded of himself did lead to 2 years where the Rockies went to the postseason, including one where they went to the World Series, one that's still the best record in franchise history on record, and then 2010, a year that without an epic collapse and a bunch of terrible injuries right at the end of the year could have been just as good as any of those others. And he was the core piece of that. And they wanted to put the captainship that doesn't really exist on him as a rookie. And so that there, I think there's a fine line with that drive. And I will be honest, I've wondered lately if Nolan has found himself on the wrong side of that fine line. But I don't think if he has, he necessarily is irrevocably so, or that this is, any kind of issue. They're different people. Everyone's their own person. And, at some point you respond to the sequence of events up to now and the situation that you're in as an individual. And we're going to find out how Nolan Arenado ends up responding to these last couple of years and what's gone on with both the team and himself this season.
And Tulo's, modus operandi in the clubhouse might not have been good at that time, but it might not have been that it was him. It might have just been that, the way he went about his business just wasn't good for the Rockies clubhouse at that time. Because as you said, it was fine for the Rockies clubhouse a few years prior. Also, how was that attitude when he was traded to Toronto? How well did that play out for the Blue Jays? I'd say pretty darn well, as they were on the precipice of going to the World Series for the first time in, I can't do the math that quickly, about 22 years. So, I mean, he elevated that team in a major way. So, to each his own, and it's just about assembling the right team. That's part of that chemistry piece that I think no one will ever really know how to construct. Sometimes it's just there. And then I don't know how we did that. Or you think you know how you did it, but you think you do it every single year. Yeah. And you learn sometimes quicker than others, like, wow, we really missed the mark on this chemistry business. But when it lines up, you go, yeah, of course. Hey, of course we got it right. So you just really never know. And really to blame, one guy for something like that, like you said, just, isn't fair in any way.
Right. And I do think there are very real, leadership questions, both on and off the field, that need to be asked about this team. And we've talked about it going back to the loss of Gerardo Parra and Carlos Gonzalez, and particularly Carlos Gonzalez. And man, has he officially retired?
I don't think officially. No.
I would be doing everything I could if I'm, whoever's in charge. I don't know if this would even be a Jeff Bridich job. I suppose it would be.
Special assistant to the general manager, almost like what Vinny Castilla is, but
Put
a younger, more
in the clubhouse. I don't care what his job title is. Make one up. Put Carlos Gonzalez in that clubhouse. It doesn't solve everything, like we said. There's a lot going on with this team, but they don't have that, and it's not an on the field guy, so maybe it doesn't still count. Though I feel like it would work similarly because he was just there. But they need somebody to loosen them up in those moments, and whether it's bad, and I think you're right. I think the right word, like you said, is chemistry. Whether you can say the rest of the team should respond to it better, but when Nolan's not playing well, he gets tighter, and everybody around him gets tighter, and they don't have anyone to diffuse that. And so that's one more thing on the list of things to solve in the offseason.
Yeah, that's and we don't have it. We don't have knowledge as to who's the Roger McDowell. Who's the Turk Wendell? Who are those quirky guys? Usually it is a reliever, but who are the quirky guys that can just add a little brevity and keep things loose in a situation like that? You don't know who it is, but I definitely think that's something every clubhouse certainly could benefit from. But from the guys that we know in the Rockies clubhouse, they definitely are missing somebody like that.
All right, final note. Nuggets, baby. Jamal Murray, you're a bad man. That was amazing. I was again certain they were going to blow it. As a longtime Nuggets fan, I've seen them lose to the Lakers many, many times in devastating fashion, and was completely prepared for one of those again. But hey, guess what? Nuggets, baby. Jamal Murray. I don't know how he hit those shots, but he did.
Especially with the refs going against him. I mean, like, you really think the NBA is like, hey, let the best team win? Okay, it's going to be the Heat and the Nuggets. You excited for that? You sure you want that? I don't.
NBA officials are so much worse. So I give MLB umpires. It's not about MLB umpires. I talk about the strike zone so much. Why? Because there's a solution. There's a proposed solution out there, right? And so I'm building evidence in a case for we should move to a new thing. In the NBA, you're just stuck, and they're just awful, and it sucks, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just LeBron James can just fly in. He bulldozed people on a rebound he grabbed, and I was just like, we're good with that. And it's just that was like a Goldberg spear, bro. What are we doing?
I like the Ronaldo flop. That was one of my favorites too.
Oh, beautiful.
Like, oh my gosh, how many stitches am I going to need? And you're like, you're fine. You're fine, dude.
Later, they threw the straight up forearm, like classic WWE style, back before you could just throw closed fists and nobody cares. Remember when you had to actually do forearms every time? Paul Millsap caught one of those, and apparently not a flagrant. God, NBA ref, they're just the worst. That's one thing. If the Nuggets pull this off, and I actually talk about this a lot with the Rockies, it's the same thing. It's like you're the little guy fighting uphill. You're not going to get any of the breaks from the umpires. You're not going to get any of the breaks from the refs. LA is going to be in your way every damn time. You're going to have to go through there, and they're always going to have 5 to 10 times the amount of money and superstar power that you do. And they're always going to be able to, if they have a bad run of 2 or 3 years, just get rid of those guys and buy a whole new team. And that's exactly, and it's just, they're always going to be there. And
better clothes, better tattoos, better arm candy. Everything's going to be better.
But when that day comes, because you will have had to defeat all of that stuff, you don't, like you just said, and this was true in 2009 because I firmly believed it in 2009 and that the Denver Nuggets were the best basketball team that year. It's not enough. It's not enough just to be the better team. You have to be that much better. You have to be the better team that never, ever quits, that has the guts that Kirby's talking about here. And that's what this Nuggets team has. That's what, some Rockies teams in the past have had that unfortunately they don't this year. But man, you got to be that much better. You got to bring it. And so it's cool to see one of the Colorado teams doing that, representing the state proud.
Love it. Yep. Go Nuggets. They're going to do it. I got a good feeling. Also, wait, I got to give Will a shout out.
Yeah.
Well, I was a Jack McDowell fan when I was younger, and here's a fun fact that I think you'll like. Do you know Jack McDowell was in a rock band? He's like one of the first ball players that had a rock band. They're called Stick Figure. I've never heard them. This is pre-MP3 days.
Okay.
You can just like look somebody up and go, "Oh, Jeff Hardy. Like, Jeff Hardy recorded an album. What? This is a thing."
I'm going to check out Bronson Arroyo's concert.
Bronson Arroyo. You got Bernie Williams.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's all the baseball players I can think of.
Classical guitar player, I think Bernie Williams was. Yeah,
a little jazz, a little something.
There's a Reds reliever. Is Lorenzen a musician?
Unlikely. Those biceps do not say artistic.
What are you saying?
No offense. Yeah.
Back down.
Yeah, either you either spend 10,000 hours, learning, an instrument, or you do 10,000, bicep curls. And I'm thinking Lorenz is more of a curl guy.
He went with the curls. Fine.
He did. Nothing wrong with that.
All right. Well, if you don't want to miss out any of our Nuggets coverage, by the way,
yeah,
head on over there. Make sure you're following those guys. They're doing a great job. They're having a lot of fun, obviously. We're going to continue to have a lot of fun no matter what happens with the Colorado Rockies for the rest of the season, because we love baseball. We love talking baseball with all of you. And the second that the baseball ends, we love talking about all the ins and outs of what they can do to make this thing better for next year, taking a look at what these other teams are doing that's succeeding for them, watching what's probably going to be the most insane postseason of all time. There's going to be stuff that's going to make people big mad. I totally forgot, Will, about that. They even ran a special on Drew Stubbs playing piano.
I actually thought that was a nice bit of trolling there by Will.
No.
I would have liked that. Like, oh, did you know Johan Fland is a semi-professional violinist? Oh, really?
Did you forget all about how Michael McHenry used to play drums in a jazz band?
Yeah.
That seems plausible. That seemed way too plausible. Once I said it out loud, I was like, that wasn't weird enough.
Ben Paulson once played the triangle at the Sydney Opera House, and not many people know that.
Ben Paulson was a big Nathaniel Rateliff fan.
And his name was Ben Paulson.
The thing, like the one conversation I ever had with Ben Paulson was about Nathaniel Rateliff at Red Rocks.
Son of a bitch.
And that's been Late Night with DNVR Rockies. We appreciate y'all listening into the podcast. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. You'll be here on the YouTubes. Give us subscribe there, a like. Give us an upvote. I keep forgetting to ask for those. Give us the little upvote on YouTube. It helps more people find the video, so that if there are other Rockies fans who want to come hang out with us and chat about the team, they can do that. So any help you can give us there, obviously fantastic. Follow us on social media at Drew Creasman, at Patrick Lyons, at DNVR_Rockies. You got to give a subscribe to the DNVR.com so you don't miss out on any of that written content, including an article I published a day or two ago about just reasons to watch and what you can enjoy for the Colorado Rockies down the final stretch, and preview. You'll never guess which Colorado Rocky I've decided to do a deep dive on and tell you not to believe everybody who's lying to you about his numbers. That's right. It's Raimel Tapia again coming your way this week. I'll have a big deep dive on what's going on with Raimel Tapia and why you should believe in it, at least to some extent, and why it's a nice piece for the Rockies to have moving forward. We got all kinds of cool stuff coming your way also. So you got to make sure that subscription gets you discounts on shirts, hats, masks. You get bigger beer down at the DNVR bar. Plus, you just get to belong to one of the coolest communities going here in Colorado. The way they respond down at the DNVR bar when the Rockies win, even when they're way down, the game is always on. Again, teams out of it, they're way down. Doesn't matter. Your ball game is on, along with all the other Colorado sports there at the DNVR bar. That's what we do. Love you all out there in the community. Just continue to remain absolutely awesome. We will continue to remain absolutely Drew Creasman and Patrick Lyons. And until next time, we will see you at the ballpark.